I began this poem just before Christmas 2014 and then stopped because I realised that it wasn't, if you like, time specific in the way that I wanted to treat the poem. It was time specific because dealing as it does with the Christmas Day Truce in the First World War, of which there were many apparently when soldiers from both the English and the German trenches came out and had a game of football or just stood around and chatted and so on and so on. There were greater issues, and one of the questions that I constantly ask myself is, how did it begin again? By that I mean, how did the war, the fighting, begin again after there had been a day of being together, mixing together, meeting the so-called enemy? And so I wrote the rest of this over the following months and tried to explore the fact that it wasn't the enemy so much we were fighting, it wasn't just our army, but it was made up, or the enemy and our army were made up of individuals with lives. Christmas Day Truce, 1914. Imagine Christmas Eve in the trenches, lingering traces of light. The soldiers squat down with a mug of hot tea and they think of their families tonight. They think of the magic of Christmas, of dinner on Christmas Day, of childhood joys on Christmas Eve, and of why they are so far away. Hard to keep spirits uplifted, knowing they'll not be at home, but trapped in a trench with a battle to win, surrounded by men and alone. They sing and they hum Christmas carols whilst musing the battles ahead, in this war that they joined up to see off the Hun, in this war that could soon see them dead. Too late for regret, too soon to despair, a limbo from which no release, but into these deepest and darkest of thoughts came some music which sounded of peace. The Germans were singing a carol, the beautiful silent night. Stille Nacht, heilige Nacht, all is calm, all is bright. Imagine, such tenderness lay in those voices that few of the men could not weep, with the dream of desiring to be back at home, snug in bed, safe and sound, fast asleep. Yet all of them knew that the music was real, that the enemy wanted to share their hopes and their dreams of their families back home through this beautiful musical prayer. Just moments before, words were brutal, decisive, and premised on "soldiers obey," but the words of this carol uplifted their hearts with the enemy just yards away. Heads popped up, heads popped down. No shooting, no sounds anywhere, apart from the singing of Stille Nacht and a white handkerchief in the air. Then Germans were standing and waving their arms in a show of abundant goodwill, and soon all were talking and shaking the hands of the men they'd been trying to kill. Imagine. They'd not even thought that it might be a trap, their instinct defying their reason, forgetting, ignoring the fact that such action was simply and obviously treason. All mingled together, the khaki with grey, and talked of the misery they shared. The idea of treason meant nothing right now. In fact, the idea seemed absurd. In no time at all they were sharing provisions, plum puddings plus schnapps, fags and rum, and also their stories and photos of family, ignoring the horrors to come. Some talked of why they should be fighting at all. We're fighting for country and king. But why are you fighting? One soldier was asked. He answered, to do the right thing. Soon morning had broken, and nothing was changed. Yet something had changed all the same, and out of their meeting and talking and sharing arose the idea of a game, a football. Who knows who provided the football to play with, or how many soldiers joined in? Who knows if they just larked about with the football, or were they all playing to win? Who cares? Officers knew that control had been lost, but avoided consulting HQ, deciding that they could recover the men and their officer discipline too. Imagine, the following morning, what thoughts must have passed through the minds of the men on each side, knowing that others determine your life when your duty and freedom collide. To pick up a gun and start killing again, or continue these moments of peace, and knowing the enemy's misery is yours, decide that your killing will cease. Who knows the truth of what happened that day, why the killing began once again, and how much the threat of that peace must have worried all officers leading their men? Men who all knew that a soldier obeys, men who had plenty to fear. Fraternization was treated as treason, and shooting squads make most things clear. Imagine, when asked by the men, "Is the armistice over?" the officer took out his gun. He aimed at a soldier. He shot him, the enemy, the husband, the brother, the father, the son. Imagine. Have a happy and peaceful Christmas.